I'm John Awada here at the Yale School of Management in New Haven, Connecticut. I am a lecturer here in the practice of management and co-lead with Ravi Dar and Ted Snyder the Yale program on stakeholder innovation and management. Since 2019, we have interviewed more than 200 CEOs of organizations of all types and sizes. And we've explored the connection between a firm's relationships with customers, employees, owners, communities, society, and that connection with the firm's ability to create long-term economic value. This is a straightforward proposition in concept, but in practice, it is very hard, and sometimes it's even controversial. I'm joined this morning here at Yale with more than 100 students and faculty, as well as students joining virtually from some of the more than 30 business schools that are part of the Global Network for Advanced Management. And many more will view this session when it's recorded and posted later. To all of you here at Yale and on the network, thank you for joining us. If you're here with me in New Haven and you have a question, when we get to questions very soon, I know you have questions, please raise your hand. We'll bring you a microphone. Please do introduce yourself to Roger. And if you're joining us virtually, please submit your questions in the Q&A section of the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. And I'll be selecting questions from our virtual guests, prioritizing those who identify yourselves by name and your school, please. So please do that. Now, let me introduce all of you to Commissioner Goodell. Football, and for our discussion today, that means American football, is a very popular sport. It's also a significant business. When Roger Goodell became NFL commissioner, and commissioner in this case means chief executive officer, in 2006, the NFL's annual revenue was just over $6 billion, and the average team franchise was worth under $900 million. Over 20 years, under his leadership, the NFL has secured a media rights package valued today at approximately $110 billion for 11 years. It has expanded to 9 international games planned for this year and built a media strategy that keeps 87% of games on free-to-air television while deploying streaming platforms to reach younger audiences globally. Today, the NFL is the highest revenue sports league in the world, generating more than $23 billion annually, nearly double the Premier League and twice the NBA, the National Basketball Association. The NFL business model is unique. 32 independently owned team franchises that compete on the field, but then pool and distribute the revenue equally. 12 of the 20 most valuable sports franchises in the world are NFL teams. Roger joined the NFL in 1982 as an intern. He worked through every part of the league office and was chosen by the 32 owners to become its 8th commissioner. He graduated magna cum laude from Washington Jefferson College with a degree in economics. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner Goodell.
Thank you.
Let me start with a question or two, Roger, and then we'll quickly get to the student questions and observations. Every enterprise has stakeholders and its version of customers, employees, owners, and a relationship with society. What makes the NFL stakeholder dynamic different from most enterprises?
I think everybody who's a fan or experiences football believes they are stakeholders, and we treat them like stakeholders. People look at the ownership. We have 32 owners. Every one of those owners has one vote, and we need a supermajority to pass new media agreements, new labor agreements. So they're a key stakeholder, I would say. But our players are key stakeholders. They're a big part of our success. They're extraordinary athletes, but they're even more extraordinary young men, and we're proud of what they do in their communities. Our fans are stakeholders. They're important stakeholders. Everything we do is through the lens of our consumers, our fans, and what we can do to bring in more fans into the NFL. And then I'd say our partners are stakeholders, particularly our media partners. They are a connection between the fans and the sport. And the quality of that production, the quality of that partnership, the alignment of that partnership is key. So I really do feel that there are multiple stakeholders in the NFL, and we treat them that way because we get valuable perspective, but we also get value back from them in what they're either looking for or how they can make the NFL better ultimately.
Thank you. The CEO of a corporation, of course, has many stakeholders, but the CEO feels ultimately accountable to the investors or the owners of the firm. To whom do you feel accountable?
To the game, ultimately. My job is broader than that. The owners do select to select me. I guess they can also choose to fire me. They would need 24 of the 32 teams to do that, I guess. But so my job is not to upset the owners in a group of 24 or more, I guess. But ultimately, I'm supposed to represent the integrity of our game. I believe that's my number one priority. It's unique because you would say that the owners are my bosses, but I also have to discipline our owners. I have to discipline our clubs. I have to take actions that you wouldn't normally do with your boss. And that's why I feel a sense of independence. I feel I represent our players and making sure that we do everything to make their experience a positive one, including the safety of the game, but also to make sure that our partners get value from our relationships. So again, it would be somewhat close to the stakeholders. I don't feel an obligation to any one individual or any group of individuals. I feel a responsibility to the game.
Thank you. We have a question from a colleague in Italy. This is from Johann Schapper from the Bocconi School of Management in Italy. The question is this: politics and sports have always been intertwined. What is your opinion on that? Should sports be neutral or advocate for societal change and draw attention to injustices?
I think it's a combination of things. Ultimately, people come to watch a football game or are involved with the National Football League because they want to be entertained. They enjoy the sport. They may watch it with their friends. They may go to a game with their friends. But I think every organization has a responsibility also to stand up for values and to be responsible and to be part of their communities. And we like to believe that we are responsible in that bound. Our league as general has very strong values and strong relationships on how we give back to our communities. Each of our 32 clubs do that. And our players do that in an extraordinary way. So it's very important for us to be that uniting factor and something that can bring people together. And you have to stand up for something. On the other hand, I don't want people to come to a game to be distracted with political messages. And so we recognize the platform we have. We have millions of people watching us every weekend. People want a piece of that platform. They want to use it. When they have an opportunity to cite the NFL, they know they're going to get attention in the media. So we're very cautious about that and trying to make sure we can separate our game and the entertainment of our game as much as possible from the everyday politics.
Thank you. Questions from our colleagues here? Yes. We have a microphone yes, it's coming.
Thank you for being with us, Commissioner Goodell. My name is Christian. I'm a first-year MBA student here at Yale. And my question for you is around the NFL's international strategy. I know one of your first decisions early on as the commissioner was closing down NFL Europe. And I'm curious now, 20 years later, seeing the kind of growth and the demand and how difficult it is now to even get tickets for a lot of the NFL International Series, what you see the future of the NFL there, whether it's opening up a similar league to what there was at one point, or eventually even getting an expansion team to London or Germany where there's huge demand.
When we switched for those who don't know what NFL Europe was, it was it actually was considered NFL Europe. Then it went from World League to NFL Europe to, frankly, NFL Germany almost, because I think 5 of our 6 teams when we closed it were in Germany. And it was an ability for us to develop our game on a global basis, but it was also to develop players. And we had a multitude of I would call it strategies and objectives. And it really wasn't hitting the major objective, which was to broaden the popularity of our game. While it was successful in some of those markets, it was not successful financially, but that wasn't the real issue. We felt that there was a different strategy that was more effective, which was to bring real NFL games to the international audience. You don't market yourself with a second-class product, and frankly, the World League was a second-class product. It was played by players that couldn't make it to the NFL. Now, maybe some did eventually, but it wasn't the best product. And I feel the same way about the preseason. You don't market yourself with something that's not the highest quality product. And the highest quality product for us is regular season and real live competitive games. So we changed that strategy in 2008. I think it's the first year we played in the UK with a regular season game. As was mentioned by John, I think at the top, we're now playing 9 this year in, I think, 4 different continents. And our fans are growing at a very fast pace because they're seeing the best of the best. They're seeing games that are live. And as you guys know, for those of you that spend time in the UK, they call them friendlies when it's not a real game. We didn't want to sell ourselves with friendlies. We want to sell it with live action. And you've got to combine that with a lot of other activity. Your media is critically involved in that, because you don't just put a game somewhere and play a game. You have to support it with, and usually most of this in advance, but strong media coverage to develop a fan base and to be able to take advantage of playing a game there, which I describe as sort of the spark. But you got to have the foundation around it to take advantage of that when you do it. And so playing flag football, which is a really important initiative of ours on a global basis. We're in the Olympics in 28. I was just in Australia last week, pitching for the Olympics in 32. We're a global sport. Over 20 million people are playing flag football, particularly young women. And we're thrilled by that. So it's broadening our fan base. And that's why we're in it, is to build a fan base on a global basis and become a global sport.
We have many questions coming in about the global strategy, Roger. If you're a U.S.-based car maker and you want to go global, people buy cars everywhere. But often when you go outside the United States, you say football, they mean soccer or American football. So in addition to playing games internationally, what else has the NFL needed to do to expand the game globally?
Well, John, I mentioned a couple of those. I think the most important thing is the same thing that brought us success here in the States, which is our relationship with media partners, reaching the broadest number of people through media platforms. And that's particularly exciting for us right now because, as you all know, media platforms are expanding. We can go direct to consumer. When I first started in the NFL, I remember going around to international broadcasters, and we were trying to get a time slot that ended up being 2:30 in the morning in most cases on a low distributed platform. Now, again, we can go to direct to consumer. We can get to a number of different platforms that can reach a large number of people. We even have partners now that go global, whether it's Amazon or Netflix or YouTube. Those are partners that bring in a global audience and can reach, I think, consumers, but also potential consumers, and bring them into the ecosystem. And so I think that's number one. I think engaging fans on a regular basis, I think that's a big part of where Flag comes in. Merchandising and marketing, people like to touch it. They like to feel a part of it. They like to wear it. They like to feel like they are part owners in it. And so all of that is the effort, and the strategy is really how you bring those together at the right time, and you bring the game to sort of ignite the work that you've done in setting that foundation, and then how you decide. We only have a limited amount of inventory. I hope we can get to 16 regular season games sometime in the near future. We're well on our way. We're up to 9 this year, and I think that potential is there. Whether we get to, and I think the young man who I think it was Christian mentioned, would we ever have a franchise? I do think that's possible, but it would be an NFL franchise or franchises, because I think that's what you want to do. Is you want to go with the highest standard of football.
Maybe one more on the international or global strategy, Roger. This comes from Romario from the Universitas Indonesia. How do you architect a strategy that allows for aggressive global expansion without, quote, bankrupting the loyalty of your domestic base?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think that was somewhat of an initial reaction when we started the international series, is that the fans in that marketplace said, we're losing a game. We don't want to lose that game. I think we've evolved in a very positive way. One, we've restructured our season, so we went from 16 games to 17. We're contemplating that with our Players Association, whether we go from 17 to 18. So we've added the premier inventory. So that's been helpful in giving us additional inventory. Second, I think fans and communities have seen the value of playing an international game. When we go overseas, the two teams bring a large number of not just fans, but they bring a large number of commerce. They bring partners. They bring people who want to do business in whatever city we're playing, and vice versa. So we've established what I'll call is an international commerce platform that is incredibly valuable to the communities, the businesses in those communities, the businesses that may be our partners, and helping them expand their business, whether it's globally or whether it's into the United States in a market that they haven't had the experience with. So we've been, I think, exceeded all expectations on that. We don't get that kind of feedback anymore. And I think as we look at the continuing restructuring of our season and adding inventory in an intelligent, smart, safe way, I think we'll continue to do that in a successful way.
Thank you. This is from Matthew, who's here at Yale, but joining virtually. I'm going to add a little bit to this. I mean, your enterprise is characterized by very high profile and strong personalities. Can you talk more about how you balance the interests of the ownership group into one coherent strategy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. A lot of people reframe that question a little bit in the sense of, how do you do with 32 multi-billionaires that all have their own way of doing things and success? And it's actually not the most difficult part of my job. The job in a position like this is to communicate the strategy, the challenges, the potential opportunities, and to get them to understand it, to be able to have open discussion about it, to have input. We work very closely with our membership. As I said, our structure is that I have to bring these major things like media deals or policies on expanding our business internationally to the full ownership. We do that through committees, which is a smaller number of owners, roughly 6 or 7 or 8. We work it through. We bring it to the floor. We may adapt it further. We are very focused on innovating and finding new ways of doing things. We don't set something here and send it out and say, this is it. We actually work that through with our clubs and get their buy-in. And when they feel ownership in that decision, it makes all the difference in the world. They feel a greater passion about it and a greater involvement that they have in the success of it. And so that's actually been one of the easiest things. It also gives you a great deal of confidence. If you can convince 32 different clubs or 32 different executives and owners that have had great success in a variety of different businesses, that's the right solution, usually feel pretty good about it because it's been vetted well. You've got a diversity of thought and likelihood you have a pretty good idea. So I take that as probably my sort of the political part of my job in many ways, is trying to make sure that our 32 owners are informed and they understand that strategy and they have a position to be able to contribute to that.
Thank you. Another question in the room here?
Hello, thank you so much for your time. My name's Justice. I'm a one-year degree student here at Yale from Germany. You mentioned earlier that your number one priority is protecting the integrity of the game. So my question is, how do you balance which teams you send overseas and how often, with assuming that the biggest teams will attract the biggest fan base overseas, but also you don't want the biggest teams to sort of keep building up their fan base and build that gap to the other teams in the NFL?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Justice. And when we first started the strategy in 2008, honestly, when our people sort of developed this idea, it was the first big challenge I had as commissioner to try to get those 24 votes. We had to beg, borrow, and try to get teams that would participate in this because they saw it as a disruption to the season. That can we do this competitively so that I'm not at a disadvantage when I return home to continue the season. And that first year we had the Dolphins and the Giants play actually in London, and neither one of them were having great seasons going into it. But they actually had such a good experience in the UK that they had 5 days together as teams. And the Giants went on and won the Super Bowl that year. And so and the coach, actually, Tom Coughlin, said later that season, the London game was a key for us because we came together as a team. And that helped us get through the difficulties that we were being challenged with. And so now teams look at it and they say, it's not a disadvantage to play. It could even be an advantage. And they want to play. So we're now turning teams down. We're putting our schedule together, which will be released in a few weeks. The number of teams that want to play internationally, we can't handle all of them. So what we've done is try to build on that success, right? Make sure that each team has a great experience, that they can do the things they need to do to be competitive. We show them business opportunities by being able to play internationally. We convince them that the global strategy of making the NFL a global sport is to their long-term advantage. And now they want to do it. As far as the teams, listen, one of the things that's the strength of the NFL is we're all 32 teams. Our league has never been more competitive. We obviously have teams that have stronger brands. One, because they've been in the league longer. Two, they may have had greater success. But we want to, and we do this, all 32 of our teams are marketed across the league equally. Now, we obviously put certain teams in the television windows where it's going to attract the largest audience. But internationally, I think we have a fan base and we develop a fan base by letting those teams market in those markets and play in those markets. And you see the way the following develops around them. So it's not always based on whether they're successful. It's based on how they're marketed, what the team brand represents, and how they engage with their fans.
Thank you. So the Giants that year went on to win the Super Bowl. Well, since you're sending my 49ers to both Australia and Mexico this year, you heard it here. Not correlation, not causation, but you heard it. Let's hear from.
Hi, Roger. My name is Anirudh. I'm a first-year MBA student here, also a Silver Scholar. As commissioner over the last 20 years, you've had to navigate many public crises like Spygate and Deflategate, and I'm sure there's many internal crises that we know, but none of the public knows about. What lessons can you share from those experiences?
Yeah, it's again a very good question. The things that we've been challenged with, and this is my 45th season in the NFL since I started as an intern, so I've seen a lot over the years. I could have never imagined the challenges we'd have when I started as commissioner. There are just things that evolved. COVID being a great example. Those types of issues like Spygate and those not terribly unusual over the period of time, but as the success of the league elevates, everything that we do becomes much more significant and much more of interest publicly. And that's a good thing because it raises the standards, it raises the bar. And so people look to us for leadership. They look to us to do the right thing. Sometimes those things are hard. So my number one North Star is to do the right thing. And that's not always easy to know. But I find in many leadership situations, the people know the right thing to do. They just don't have the courage to do it. And we sort of pride ourselves on having the courage to do it, even if it's unpopular in the short term. When you have to lead your league into a lockout, as we did in 2011, I guarantee you that's not popular with really anybody. But it's necessary to set the framework. And I believe our success that we've had in the last 15 years that John mentioned is based on the fact we put a system together through a lot of pain and a lot of difficulties in the short term, but put us in a position to set that foundation so that everyone participates in that success. And ultimately has led to, I think, where we are. And so you have to be able to walk through the fire. You have to be able to make those short-term decisions that are going to lead to long-term success. If you think short-term, your success will be short-term, in my view. And so we have the courage to do the right thing, hopefully at the right time. And we work hard to try to evaluate those things. But when we get there, if the stakes are high and we still think it's the right thing to do, we do it. And I think that's really fundamental to our success.
Roger, this is related to the question you just answered. This is from Andreas Clark from UBC Sauder School of Business in Vancouver. When you manage through, let's call them crises, and there's a rift between what the players want, what the owners want, what the fans want, what the sponsors want, et cetera, do you have a North Star that you look to help you navigate or guide what you decide to do?
Yeah, I think that North Star is do the right thing for the long term. It's not easy. My job, as I said earlier, was to stand up for the integrity of the game. If we have something where certain violations are happening, whether they're policies or rules, our job is to be able to make sure those are implemented fairly, equally. Because if one team does it, there's 31 others that are looking to see how you respond to that. So we take all of them seriously, and we deal with them, and we deal with them up front, and we deal with them publicly. We don't hide from them. Those issues are out there, and we take the process that we go through seriously, but also the outcome will be the outcome. And it's like officiating. If you listen to officials or you listen to fans, if it's your team, you see it differently than the other team does. So you're never going to make them happy, and or all of them happy. You've got to do the right thing. You got to make the right call at the right time, and you have to do that in a split second. And you understand that when you build a passion around a sport, that you're going to get that. Ultimately, what you want to get to is respect. Respect that it's being done fairly, it's being done thoughtfully, and it's being done in the best interest of the game long term.
Very good. Another one from the room here. Yes.
Hi, Commissioner. Peter from SOM. And first, I wanted to thank you for Super Bowl LIX. So I work for the Economic Development Organization in New Orleans, and we found it to be really an incredible opportunity to cultivate civic pride and to make some long-term infrastructure improvements and even to attract new businesses. So I cannot be more grateful, and I hope that you consider us in 2031, of course. But
Good pitch. Good pitch.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. But I did want to ask you to share more about the NFL's role in communities, because you do have an outsized impact in communities and their economic development. And also if you can share more about your work and relationships with local governments, I'd be really curious to hear your take on that.
Well, let me take them sort of a little bit backwards, Peter, and hopefully I'll get to all the points you're making because it's pretty broad, but it's really important. Our 32 teams are really the focus of their local communities. Obviously, the NFL has the broader responsibility, but I would say in the last 3 days I've spoken to 6 different governors of our states where we have teams, and some of that's stadium related, some of it's event related. We're gearing up for our draft next week in Pittsburgh. Spoke to the governor of Pennsylvania. It's a huge economic impact to these communities when you have an event like this. Somewhere normally between 500 and 1 million people will show up at an event, a draft event, over the 3-day period. Its economic impact will probably be somewhere from 200 to 600 for the draft. For a Super Bowl, it's well over $1 billion now. I think New Orleans may have been the first or second that went over the $1 billion economic impact. You can't find events that have that kind of impact. But I always say it's not the economic impact as much as it is the platform. And I think in New Orleans is a great example of it, Peter. As you know, there was a tragic event that happened down the French Quarter a month before. The community was hurting. And we came in working with the community to use that platform to try to help that community heal. And we brought the community in. We didn't just dictate what that was. We talked to the leadership. We talked to the people. We found out the organizations that were working so hard to try to help the community recover. And then we put in plans to sort of say, how do we celebrate the people of New Orleans? How do we help them pull themselves out of tragic circumstances, which caused a lot of pain? And I think we think we can uplift communities, honestly. And I think we don't do that alone. We do it with them. And, you know, even something as simple as Fox was the one that came up with the idea. They were the broadcaster of the Super Bowl. We challenged them. This is what we're trying to do. They came up with the idea, let's go to the French Quarter. And we had Lady Gaga singing in the French Quarter, 2:30 in the morning. We showed it at, I guess, 5 o'clock the next night, about an hour before kickoff. And it was one of the most incredible, uplifting moments I can remember. But it didn't just uplift New Orleans, and it didn't uplift the people who had been through that tragedy. It uplifted, I think, the world in many ways, because they got to see what was happening. And I think they were inspired by the people of New Orleans, which over and over again were inspired by the people of Louisiana and how they've overcome hurricanes and disasters, and working with them to get through that and help uplift them. To me, that's the most gratifying aspect of this job, is that we're in a position to do that and to be able to have an impact far beyond economics. I don't really talk about the economics that John talked about before. I talk about what the NFL can do to lift communities.
Thank you. This is from Lorenzo Todaro and Bocconi University. If you had to reinvent the NFL from scratch today, what would you design differently?
There's a lot of things. You know, some people have talked about it in a single entity structure, which would require that no one owns a specific franchise, but they own a portion of the league. So let's just say it was 32 founders. They would each own 32 rather than the teams. I think that's a mistake. There are certain legal advantages to that from an antitrust standpoint. And that has been difficult for a league when they have 32 different teams. Are you seen as a single entity or 32 different entities? And different antitrust, either courts or laws, look at that differently. I'm not sure I would change an awful lot about the way the NFL has evolved. I think it's had its growth. It's had its challenges. The early years certainly weren't easy. We've learned to be innovative. We've learned to be able to look at what's going on around us. The media world, I spend most of my time on the media world right now because it's evolving so quickly. Most of you I can see are on the younger ages. You're consuming media differently than I did when I was a kid in your age. And we have to be there, right? We're not moving to streaming because we want you to move to streaming. It's because you've already gone to streaming, or you're already on social, or we have to find new ways to market ourselves because influencers have become more influential on you than maybe watching a 30-second commercial. So I think it's really not the structure so much. It's the attitude and the approach that you take to innovate throughout your company, and don't take success for granted or finality. We don't talk about our success. We talk about our challenges and the success we want to achieve in the future. And we're never satisfied. And once you think you've reached the mountain, that's the fastest way you're going to be number two and get knocked down the mountain. And so I think that's probably more valuable than anything. And I think that's, maybe it's something about sports, but when somebody wins the Super Bowl, 31 other teams are shooting at them and they're trying to take them down. That's how we look at it. Is that it's not just competitors. We look at everybody as competitors, and every circumstance, whether it's the sun in California, we have to evolve and we have to improve what we do if we want to make sure we're satisfying consumers and our partners.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, here.
Hi, Commissioner. My name is Con Ardick. I'm a second-year MBA here at Yale. I had a question regarding the tech implementation into the game, specifically like officiating. I mean, with the development of tech and AI, I'm sure there's going to be a day where the need for referees on the field is very minimal. So how do you go about deciding exactly like how much to implement every season and without compromising the integrity of the game that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, it's very important. And it's one, listen, at the end of the day, we focus on the game. It's the number one priority. And I think officiating, for those who are fans, that's usually the number one thing they complain about. They want to make sure that it's better. And that comes in a lot of different ways, but we think technology is a critical component of that. Instant replay, we were one of the first leagues to implement instant replay now, probably 30 some odd years ago. And I think it's a tool to help officials. The game is so fast, and the players are getting faster. I think they're actually more talented. And I think the technology of the way you see the game, if you go back and look at a highlights or a replay of a game from 20 years ago, the things you see today are not even close to what you saw 30 years ago. You had actually snow, whether it was snowing or not, it was the quality of the picture. You didn't have the cameras that could go into super slow-mo. You didn't have 4K. You didn't have the ability to see things that you can see today. And that makes the official's job even harder, because when you see things, it's easy in hindsight. These individuals are down there on a field moving with 22 players on the field at light speed, and you have to make that decision in a flash second. So we want to give them technology. And so replay, we're expanding that to replay assist. I think AI, without question, one of the things we're working on is how can we use AI to assist officials? And I think your question posed that doesn't mean you get rid of officials. It just means you're giving them a tool to be able to do their job better. And so that's how we look at it ultimately. And we look at AI and how do we advance football be one big category. That could be officiating. It also could be how teams prepare each week. It could be how you evaluate college players before the draft. All of that is being used today and will be used in increasing speed and obviously efficiency. The other one is developing fans. There is zero question to me that AI is going to help us develop a better experience for our fans. It might be personalizing it to what you all want. It may be using other aspects of content to be able to either increase your, I'll call it, passion about the sport, or maybe get you involved with the sport. And it could be something as simple as you can offer the game in 16 different languages, and you could teach them about the game in multiple different ways. The other one is really just driving more engagement and just making sure that they have the opportunity to experience your game in different ways. And then I do think there's another one that I think all of us are facing as businesses, but you'll be facing it as you come out, which is, how do you strengthen an organization with AI? How do you use AI to be smarter about the way you structure your organization and you make decisions, the speed of which you make decisions? The data has been a huge issue for us in our ability to be more successful, and that's on the field and off the field. Getting data about injuries, what types of contacts cause injuries? How do we take that contact out of the game? How do we drive technology to develop better helmets that can make our players safer? How do we make the fields better? And how do we drive investment in that and use technology to develop maybe different types of artificial surfaces that can be even better than grass? So all of these things, technology is a huge part of what we do today, and it'll be even a bigger part in the next few years.
Thank you. I've got one from Elizabeth Yee from Canada, UBC Sauder School of Business. What was your original career plan when you entered college?
Well, I know this is going to sound a little as if it's not true, or it's but when I entered into college, I wanted to work for the National Football League. I knew it. I loved the sport. I loved what it represented. The then commissioner was a man named Pete Rozelle, who eventually hired me and was a huge mentor of mine. I wrote my dad a letter, honestly, when I graduated from college, and I said, there's two things, and this is obviously when I graduated, not when I entered, and I know that was your question. I said, I want to make you proud, and I want to be commissioner of the NFL. Now, that was a pretty foolish thing, because at the time, I think there had only been 6 commissioners. And it's probably, at that point in time, somewhere around 65 years of history. There's still only been 8, and we're now on our 107th season. And 3 since 1960, Pete Rozelle, Paul Tegabu, and myself. So I would say it was a dream. It was something I wanted to work for the NFL. I don't think I was as conscious about becoming commissioner. I don't know why I used that. When I look back at it, it would probably have been one of the most foolish comments. And probably when I sent that to my dad, I would have loved to see his reaction. He probably said, "Oh my gosh, my son's delirious." But you have to have dreams and goals, and you have to have a belief that what you want to do and how you want to be successful in that. And then you have to have a lot of people who are great mentors and people who give you opportunities. And that's been the magic of my career. I've just had wonderful people around me, whether it's family or whether it's business or whether it's friends, that have been extraordinary mentors and people who tell you what you need to hear and are there for you to give you some guidance, sometimes just plain support or an ear. So I would really, if I had one thing I would leave you with, and I would ask you, find great mentors in your life. And I have hundreds, not just 1, 2, or 3. I have hundreds, literally, that I've relied on over the years that have helped me get where I am.
Thank you. Any more questions here in the room? How about over here?
Hey, Roger. Thank you for joining. My name is James. I'm a second year here at Yale. So recently, the NFL passed a new rule which allows, institutional investors, so private equity investors, to invest up to 10% into NFL teams. And I must admit, as a fan, that scares me a little bit, just because I think the ownership model of private equity is a little bit different from the traditional ownership model of NFL. So I guess, what is the plan there? And do you see a world in which sort of institutional investors or private equity will be able to own 100% of the sports teams?
I don't in the National Football League. I can't speak for other sports, James, but I share your fear. But I think we structured it in such a way to address those fears. First off, it's capped at 10%. Second of all, it has no say in the involvement of the organization. It is completely silent investment. They do not sit on boards. They do not have any input in the operation of a franchise in any way. And it's what it gave to us. And I think some of the franchises, and by the way, it's been 2 years, I think this August, that we passed that. I believe only 4 teams have taken advantage of it. So it's been very limited in its actual application. Is that it was an opportunity for teams to get liquidity in cases that might be able to help them invest back in a stadium, as an example, or other investments they might be making with their franchise, or even outside of that. And I think it's had, frankly, zero negative impact. The fears that you might think about with private equity are looking for returns in a 7-year period. We haven't seen it. Now, we haven't gotten to that 7-year period, but I dare say the franchise escalation, I don't think the private equity are going to have trouble getting returns. But we were the last league to probably jump into this. And we really learned from others. We tried to avoid some of the mistakes that maybe others have made, and tried to really. We spent a year putting this policy together, talking to people in the private equity space, as well as banking space, investment space, our ownership, others that, and really crafted this in a very careful way to try to address some of those fears. So I don't have that fear that we're losing the individual ownership perspective, and I don't think this in any way is going to erode that. I don't even see a move right now to even increase it over the 10%. Now, we picked the 10% as a low number because you can't go down, as you know, once that happens. So we wanted to see how this was. So we'll learn from it. Will it increase a little bit? Yes. Do I think it'll ever get to 100%? No.
Very
Not
good.
in my lifetime, at least.
We're running short of time, so you have the microphone. Go ahead.
Hi, Roger. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Julius. I'm a dual degree student with HEC Paris and Yale here, School of Management. My question is your view kind of on competition in the sense of other sports and sports leagues, and in particular maybe the rise of the MLS and soccer with the World Cup coming up as well.
Yeah, I really don't look at them as competition because I'm a lover of sports. I believe in sports. Growing up, I played everything in front of me. I watched everything in front of me. And I think there's a world of opportunities for people to be sports fans of different sports. If you're a participant, particularly as kids, I was just in Australia last week, and we were talking about the Olympics in 2032. And some of the other sports were there. They were, and they asked this exact question. And I said, flag football or the NFL, we're not here to displace anyone. We're here. I'm a believer that sports, as participants, as kids, we need sports. I think you benefit from playing sports. You learn so much about yourself and a belief in yourself. You learn about competition. You learn about teamwork. And that's what we want to see from Flag, is give everybody the opportunity and the access to be able to learn those values and use them in life. I learned from playing sports, particularly football, because I think it's the greatest team sport. I learn and I use those values and those lessons every single day at this desk, and the way I do this job. You can't win without being part of a team when you get out into the what I'll call the global world, and particularly in corporate culture. So I don't. We never are looking to displace anyone. I think there's room for everybody. I think our game and the games, I think most leagues will probably feel this, is that I'm willing to win on the quality of our game. It's like anything, and I don't like calling our game a product, but ultimately, the product is the game, but it's also the way we present it, the experience that we give fans in the stadium, or give to them at home, give to them if you're a fantasy player. All of those things are. That's what makes the difference between success and not success. And I believe we have the components to be successful, but I don't think that's necessarily going to break competition against anything else.
Thank you. One more from the room here, then I'll have final question from our colleagues overseas.
Tom Sheehan, first year MBA student here. Roger, you talked about your dad a little bit, and my question is about him and for everyone else on the call and in the room. Roger's dad was a U.S. congressman and senator and was famous for his anti-Vietnam War position, which was not always politically popular at that time. What's the biggest lesson that you learned from your dad that you've applied in your time as commissioner, and how's it helped you?
Tom, you're too young to know that. I'm impressed. That history, I'm incredibly impressed, but thank you for remembering that, or at least reading about it. You can see over my shoulder, I get the right one. If you see that brown door back there, that goes into my back room. There's something on the wall right next to it, right there. That is actually the piece of legislation that my father introduced to end the Vietnam War in 1968. For those of you who don't know, he was a congressman at the time. Then he became senator from New York when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. He was appointed by Nelson Rockefeller. And when he first got in to the Senate, he spent a lot more time moving around New York, which was his state. And it was the college students who influenced him, a group like you. And that's why I enjoy doing these things. They influenced him a great deal about the need to end the war. And my dad, I remember him coming home from one of those trips, and I think it was specifically Cornell University. And he came back and he sat us all down, and I'm one of 5 boys, with the whole family. He said, I'm going to introduce this legislation to end the Vietnam War. He was a Republican at the time, and still was until his death. But and he was in a 3-way race for the Senate. But the president, who was then Richard Nixon, and the vice president, Spiro Agnew, they're going to end my political career because I'm doing this. And it goes back to the point I was talking about before, having the courage to do the right thing. He did it knowing it would end his career. And I think that is the ultimate value and the ultimate courage. When, again, you know that you have to do something or should do something for the people you represent in this case, and you know that it's going to end your career. And that was a lesson I will never forget. And I always think about, because you have to do the right thing ultimately. And I think it's proven out that it was the right thing. It was not popular. It was controversial. He lost the election pretty badly, actually. But if you look back in history, even 6 years after this, if you look back in history, I sure like my father's position over the president of the United States at that time. And I think history proves you right in a lot of cases. If you believe in your position, it's based in value and you've thought it through. And that doesn't mean all your decisions, but in this case, I'm pretty proud of my father for that decision. So he has had a huge influence on me. He's all around my office. So is my mother, who is another huge influence. But I was very fortunate to happen.
Thank you. The final question comes from Anna Klimek from Kosminski University of Warsaw. I'm going to paraphrase her question here. Considering your experience, Roger, what advice would you give to all of our students here?
Is that a nice way of saying my age? I think I touched on this before. I was not the most focused on academics in high school. I buckled down in college, and I did well in college. But it's only because I knew I had to, and it was the pathway to the future. But I don't. I'm not sure a lot of people believed in me, and I know my family did, but even some of them didn't. I have 4 brothers that were pretty competitive. But the bottom line on it is you have to develop belief in yourself. You have to believe that you can have a positive impact, and you got to find that. There's nothing that replaces hard work, commitment, continuing to learn. And then it's the mentorship issue that I mentioned before. Anyone who thinks they're going to get somewhere by themselves, rethink that. There are so many things that will happen in your life that you can't control, but you can control your North Star. You can control the people who are around you. You can control your attitude about being thoughtful, respectful of others' opinion. And you should pay more attention to the people who don't agree with you. Ultimately, when I'm making decisions around that table behind me, I want to hear from people who have a different perspective. I want to hear that they don't agree with what I'm thinking, or don't agree with what we're at least debating, and why, and how thoughtful it is. So search for a different perspective. When I think of diversity, that's a lot of what I think about in diversity. I want people to bring different experiences, different perspectives, different backgrounds, and different ways of doing things so that we can be better. And I think that helps us. And so I guess it's a long way of saying, don't think you know everything. Believing in yourself doesn't mean that. Believing in yourself means that you have strong values and you're willing to listen and learn. And if I wasn't learning in this job today after 45 years, I think I would not be as effective in this job. You learn every day, and you have to have a curiosity about things you don't know about. And I think that's intellectual curiosity is one of the things I've seen most amongst leaders that I admire and that I spend time with, whether they're CEOs or leaders of universities or any level of success. They have an intellectual curiosity of how to get better.
Commissioner, this has been an exceptional session. Please join me in thanking Roger Goodell for being with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.